Thanks for listening to the Drummers Weekly Groovecast. You can contact the show at twitter.com/DW Groovecast and through Facebook at facebook.com/Drummers Weekly Groovecast.
Good evening.
I am warning you right now, if you touch my drums, I will stab you in the neck with a knife.
Ain't a boogie. Ain't a boogie. Mom!
Take it easy. Lower it.
I'm not gonna lower it. I have to do this now.
I don't mind you playing it, but lower it.
Well, we get straightened out?
Oh, we had a problem. I mean, we tried to do everything we could.
What do you mean?
Well, you know what I mean.
Next.
Little trouble there. You're rushing.
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
Yeah.
Oh, Philly never disappoints, does he?
I hear that same first four, and I'm just like excited by that and of three and of four wonderfulness he does on the hi-hat.
Starting next week, John is going to talk about all the transcriptions that he's done of Philly Joe, including the fours from Billy Boy.
It'll be the shortest podcast in history.
I thought you were going to demonstrate them for us, man, on our YouTube page.
Yeah. Maybe Philly cheesesteak. I'll make one.
Let's let that.
Videotape.
We'll let that sit there in silence for a little while. You know, John, how's your life? How you doing, buddy?
Man, I'm okay. I'm just trying to shape the minds of young children that have fallen in my lap. It's exciting.
Oh. Man, boy, that's a great segue into the topic for the day, isn't it?
How about that?
I'm telling you.
You never know.
You never know, that's for sure. But before we do that, as always, we will tell you how to get in touch with us. As always, you can reach out to us through our email account. That's the Drummers Weekly Groovecast at gmail.com. You can always get in touch with us as well through our Facebook page, which most of you guys like doing. That's facebook.com/Drummers Weekly Groovecast. And for the 140 character favorites, you can always try us at Twitter, twitter.com/DW Groovecast. We look forward to hearing from you. So as always, please let us know what you're up to and what you would like to hear from us. Well, today, what we're going to be talking about, a little bit of a controversial subject. And I'll give you my 2 cents on kind of how we got settled on this topic. But the topic that we're going to talk about today is drumming as a career / choosing it versus knowing that you're going to do it. It's kind of a heady topic there, isn't it, John?
Yeah, it is. But man, as kind of wide open as that is regarding opinion, and that's pretty much what we'll be driving home today. There's some inherent thing in the majority of us that have gone on to make a career of it that you just, we're going to touch on, like you just kind of know. And it's a weird, ominous sort of subject, but we can speak to our experience.
And let me say this. This show is not to be of the discouraging kind. That's not what this is about at all. Is if anything else, we want to empower you with this, and also for those folks who just know, we want to tell you that you're on the right path. So this is certainly not something that we're trying to necessarily discourage people from. We just want to empower you and make you feel good about the path that you're on is really what it's about. And the way that we came up with this topic today is best explained in a short story from my past, John.
I'm listening.
Yeah. Well, at least I know one person's listening, right? So,
do not do as I do. Just do as I say,
right.
And listen to Phil.
So the way this topic got broached was a few years ago. I have a couple of kids, that were in elementary school, a very good elementary school. And they had a wonderful music teacher, which is, it's somewhat of a rarity these days. One that schools have music teachers, and that are dedicated to doing what they're doing, So that's a boon in itself. But she was just incredibly active with these kids, and she also knew that a handful of her students at that time had parents that were professional musicians. She knew that she had, of course, me, that was, a working drummer. She also had several other parents that were involved as working musicians in like the Atlanta Opera, the Atlanta Symphony, some other just working musicians that were in the community. So she had a little bit of a pool to draw from.
She had a working drummer and some working musicians, is what you're saying.
John, you would find fault in anything that I do.
No. That's just
How long have we been married, man? And now you're bringing this up?
Go on. It was just poking fun at a bad joke, and you've internalized and taken this so sensitive. Just go on.
Look, we're going to talk about this in counseling next week, all right?
All right.
So, before I was so rudely interrupted, getting back to my kid's music teacher, she sent a brief homework assignment home for the parents that were professional musicians, the 5 or 6 of us that were musicians. And what it was kind of a little essay question. And I think that she had the preconceived notion that the answer to this question was going to be a unanimous yes. And I threw that curve where it was a no. And so to keep you guys, or to get you guys off the edge of your seat because you're wondering, what is that question? The question was essentially this, and I'll paraphrase it because it was a little bit of an elongated question, but the gist of the question was, would you advocate choosing a career in music? I said no.
No.
I said
Didn't
no.
even pause.
Yeah. And again, let me say this. This is not to be this negative kind of thing. It's not to be something, that's condemning choosing a career or the music business just in general, right? Mm-hmm. I came at it from a very different slant or from a very different angle. And again, like I said, I think this nice lady was really trying to get everyone on board to go, yes, you can choose, music as a career and it's going to be great. It's this fulfilling and rewarding thing. And in some ways it absolutely is, but I took it from a different slant, as I said, John. And what I told her was this. I said, I feel like that if you get to a point of being a musician and this is going to be a career, it. You don't have a choice. I used to have a friend that used to say, music chooses you, you don't choose it.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that.
Right. And so I explained that in the homework assignment. I said, look, if you have these other options, like, in other words, if you're a kid or even if you're, like a college student, young adult, and you're sitting there and go, well, let's see, I'd be happy being an accountant. I'd be happy being a physicist, and I would be happy being a musician. I got to choose one of those. I would say don't choose the music side of that. Don't do it.
Or at least explore
the other sides
to a great deal.
Yeah.
The other option.
And so that's what I'm talking about. Now, for myself, to kind of give my reason for why I said what I said on this homework assignment, it was essentially this. I knew from the time I was probably 15 or 16 years old, I had just been playing for a couple of years at that time. but I knew enough that I would never have like a 9-to-5 desk job. Now, I don't know how you know, but you just know.
You just know.
You just know, you know.
Yep.
I knew that I would never have that. I would never have a 9-to-5 desk job. And I knew that what I was going to be doing was going to be involved in the music business, that I was going to be playing, I was going to be teaching, I was going to do all the different things that musicians do to make their living. Mm-hmm. It's just, that's how I knew, is that it just came to me. I just knew there was no choosing. That was my basis for the entire thing.
Okay.
So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about some of these different things that come with knowing that you're going to be a professional musician. And the things that, we'll call it the trappings of being a professional musician. And these are just things that you know that it's going to happen, but you're fine with it. You're okay with it. And so if you're one of these folks that are kind of sitting on the fence, you know, if you think you got another career path you're going to go down, we're going to tell you what to expect as a professional musician. And the first thing that I'm going to say is this. If you are a professional musician, whether you realize it in your brain or not, you are officially starting your own business as a sole proprietor, okay? And you can think of it like this.
A lonely proprietor. No, soul.
Soul.
Sorry, okay. I was
S-O-U-L. Sole proprietor.
One would hope.
Yeah.
There's some people that are soulless proprietors, but they playing symphonies and stuff.
Episode 19. Soul. Yeah. But yeah, so what that means is, as a professional musician, you are not necessarily going and renting commercial property and stocking shelves as a sole proprietor, but you are establishing your own business. And we did address in a previous podcast about what it's like to establish yourself in a town, right? To establish yourself as a working musician. That's part of this process that we're talking about. But yeah, you are going to establish yourself as a business owner, is essentially what it is. And if you're a person that doesn't have a good bit of self-motivation from the standpoint of like, look, this is my own business and I've got to create this thing from the ground up, there's your first sign. Oh boy, that sounds like a comedian. There's your sign. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing, because if you're a person who is expecting health insurance benefits, bing, or a 401k,
I'd like a 1953k, relatively thin, dark.
What about a paid vacation? Oh, surely you jest. But you know that
you are a comedian.
See, so that's what I'm getting at here. That's just the beginning. And again, if this is something that you know you're going to do, you just know that that's part of it. You know, that's part of it.
I'll tell you what. That speaking to the knowing what you're going to do, about the same age as you, I don't have a real clear and pointed mindset or some specific thing that happened, but about the same time, early in high school, my experience was, I liked playing sports. I wasn't an amazing athlete by any means, but I enjoyed it. I was good enough to make the team and all that. And, I was playing hockey through middle school and junior high, if you will. And my freshman year in high school, I got in the jazz band at my high school, which was a really fantastic program and all that. And it was just like that, like not even a thought. Mm-hmm. Hey, you gotta decide what you're gonna do. I was done with hockey. Like as soon as "do" came out of someone's mouth, like, yeah, I'm done with that.
Yeah.
I'm going to play. And then even crazier, I can remember thinking, okay, I'm not crazy about school. You know, talking about 9 to 5, I knew just sitting in class was a perfect example of why I knew a 9 to 5 wasn't going to work. I hated it. But I also remember thinking as a freshman in high school, I got to do what I got to do as far as grades to be able to play and to get to where I want to be, which is I can't quit school at 16 and go play rock and roll. I mean, maybe, but probably not. That's a path that I wouldn't wish on anyone. But that was it, man. I can't explain it, but you know. And if you don't have that just, you know, smack in the face, no questions asked mindset, your advice is sage in that you probably ought to look into some other potential paths.
Isn't it funny that the passion that you have for music, or you could even say somebody else who's a successful entrepreneur, the passion that they have for opening up a, you know, say a pet store or whatever you have like that, that kind of passion and that kind of knowing that this is your calling for what you're going to do, man, it trumps all uncertainty. You know, it's the kind of thing, again, we want you to realize that if this is the thing that you're going to do, the problems that arise that are the bumps in the road, you're going to take care of them.
You figure it out.
You figure it out along the way. And, you know, it's the kind of thing also that myself being a student or being a teacher, well, I'm always the eternal student, we'll say, but being a teacher, it's the kind of thing that when I'm surrounded by these students, the ones that know that that's what they're going to do, you know, hey, I am going to be a professional musician. There's no question even in their mind at the young age of that's what they're going to do. They might ask me about these potential bumps in the road.
As well they should.
I've never had one student that knew that after I told them about all these things, look, you're going to have to put these hours in, and, you know, you're not going to have this available to you, and you're not going to have this available to you, and you're not going to have, I've never had one of them that knew, stop and go, well, I'm going to own a landscape company, you know, after that. Mm-hmm. They've always kept going. Because, I mean, I would say virtually every professional musician, they do the same thing. In other words, they know that these bumps are coming up in the road. They know you're going to have problems, you know, trying to get a mortgage the majority of the time, unless you've, you know, been in a platinum selling band or whatever. The trappings of being a, you know, self-employed person. There's all kinds of weird things that happen.
Oh yeah,
with that.
Well,
you know?
even on a more just frustrating level is how many people don't understand and are saying, "Oh, that's a mistake. You can't do that." And how many people have just looked beyond that, like, "No, I'm not accepting that as the you know, be all and end all for my life," and you just do it. But yeah, I think with creatives, there's this sort of this built-in perseverance that you know, I don't ever remember just like being just steam coming on my ears, like, "No, you can't tell me that I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. No one can tell me. And it's me against the world." I never, ever remember any of that. It was just like, what do I got to do? Where do I need to be? Who do I need to associate with in order to do what I want to do, which is play drums? And so there's some defeatist attitude if you are kind of in that defensive mode. And, you know, on occasion you might have to tell someone, your mom or somebody, like, "Hey, this is what I really want to do. Mm-hmm. I can always go back to school," whatever, all those things. But in general, you're just focused on it, and you know, and you do what you got to do. And we know a million people that have done it. And that's a fascinating thing when you think about it, you know. The odds are stacked against you, and you're just like, "I don't care."
Well, you know, when I was getting myself established, like when I was either in school studying or had just gotten out of school, these kind of hardships that we look back on now that we've talked about in the past. These things like, hey man, I'm eating ramen noodles this week. Mm-hmm. You know, well, I guess I'm gonna the TV's gonna be without TV for a little while until I get this figured out. It's this, man. That's just the stuff you just accept it and move on. And
I can't even remember thinking, oh, what a drag.
Right.
I mean, maybe like, on occasion I was thinking about a steak or something, but I could always go home.
Yeah, right.
See my mom, hey, what's up? Oh, sure, I'd love a steak.
Right. And I mean,
but nonetheless, I don't remember ever being like, oh, I can't believe I don't have cable TV.
Right.
It didn't matter.
Right. We're not trying to like romanticize this by any stretch of the means either. But again, what we're trying to kind of get the point across is that everything is pretty much secondary.
Right.
In other words, these creature comforts and these other things that we're fortunate enough now to have, weren't always there. And again, you can even take something as huge as, and not that we're not even intimating on any kind of a level that we're anywhere like near the Shark Tank people. But if you look at the stories of the Shark Tank, the hosts on there, virtually every one of them have a similar story to what we're talking about and would tell you the same thing when it comes to like entrepreneurship, which is again what you are. You're starting your own business, is that you have to have the passion and be solely focused on it and be willing to do whatever it takes, to get you from point A to point B.
Yep.
Yeah. And, another aspect of this that should be known is that you're going to have to make a fair amount of like personal life and family style kind of sacrifices. That just comes with the badge, right? When you're opening up your own business, so to speak. And like I said, it's not endemic just to musicians, but again, if you own a small store, the business comes first a lot of times.
Yeah. It's just inevitable. You have to, you're the one who's going to keep it afloat.
Yeah.
Your efforts, your sacrifice, and it really is, you do what you got to do,
Yeah.
And it can be a drag, man. There's times when I look back and I'm like, oh man, I wish I could have been there for this or that, and I missed this and that. But I wouldn't change it, given the choice, in that I'm doing what I was put on this earth to do, and I truly believe that. Yeah.
Well, how many times, John, have you had to use a statement that's similar to this? Let's say there's a family get together or a family, whatever it is, and you've been invited and almost expected to go, but it falls right in the middle of, a job commitment, a work music commitment. And you use a statement somewhere along the lines of I'm going to honor my family member by honoring my commitment to this gig, to this, this music, to this job.
Well, I mean, and sometimes it's just, do you have a choice?
Yeah.
Like in our case, hey, I'm not going to be able to make that wedding because I have $800 worth of work and it's going to cost me $1,200 to go to that wedding. You're behind the eight ball so much that, what, are you going to be evicted, or, you can't eat, you can't make your car payment. These are realities that you're going to face, and you have to hope that people understand, but sometimes make a decision like, I can't put myself or my family in that hole, and it's a drag, but it is what it is. And, I was blessed with a family who largely understood
right
about that kind of thing. And, I also grew up with the advantage of my parents preaching, do what makes you happy. So for them to all of a sudden call me out on something, they'd be like kind of hypocritical. Like, oh, what you said, do what makes me happy. Playing makes me happy.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I never put that in anybody's face, but that influence was huge in my decision to do what I wanted to do.
Sure. And as you get a little bit older and as you start having your own family, if you have a spouse or partner, it is absolutely paramount that they're on the same page, that
Yeah.
if they don't necessarily share your same passion, at least they completely understand the situation.
Right. Yeah, I know. In I'm sure in your case too. You know, they're like my wife sometimes will. She's going to Florida to see her family and taking my son with her, and I can't go. I got to work. You know, these things are just inevitable, and someone that understands that makes life a lot easier. That's for sure. And,
Yeah.
And we unfortunately know people that have someone in their life that isn't as understanding, and it makes it just
It's torture.
tough. Yeah, really brutal.
Yeah.
So that's something that, you know, you have to be prepared for. And you also, you know, communication skills in regards to that kind of thing is vital. You can't fly off the handle. You can't just, you know, bury your head in the sand or draw the line. You know, you have to compromise. There have been circumstances where I had to go do something. You know, I got to go to this event and I'm going to lose money and I have to accept it. And so you can't just be, you know, there are a few people we know that have never sacrificed anything regarding a gig. And I don't think that's terribly healthy either. On occasion.
Yeah, you have to bring some balance to your personal life.
Yeah, and that's going to go a long way with someone who is understanding the majority of the time.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, it would be equivalent to like if you had planned some type of family outing or family vacation 4 months in advance. You've already made reservations for whatever, and then all of a sudden you get a call for a $75 club gig in the middle of it, and then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, we got to cancel the entire thing. That's not healthy either. Yeah, you know.
No, it's usually the $600 out of town gig that shows up there, or
exactly.
4 of them.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, now the next thing I was going to mention actually involves what you just said, is that another thing that you have to be aware of is that you just realize as a musician who's doing this as a career, there's going to be the potential for travel, a good bit of it at certain times. I mean, the only people that I know that are in the music business that really don't do a whole lot of traveling would be people who teach for a living, you know, that type of thing. But again, it's something that you just know in the back of your mind, is that if you're going to be a musician, you have to take the music to the people wherever they are. So if you don't have the spirit of adventure, that's another red flag.
Yeah, that definitely is. As you get to a certain level, those situations are going to present themselves, and oftentimes they're financially, you know, beneficial to you, and so you have to be prepared for that. And you know, as far as having a family, you know, you've got to have the game plan to be flexible in that sense, and you know, schedules and all that worked out. So things to consider.
Right. And then, you know, there's a whole subheading to this travel thing also. And it's like all of the trappings and potential problems that happen, you know, when you're traveling. Because, you know, there are times that you and I, we both travel well.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are times that things happen.
They happen.
They happen when you're out there. And if you're not amenable and flexible to that kind of stuff, ooh, boy, that's a bad thing.
Yeah, that I think in a lot of ways that kind of takes care of itself too, though. Certain people that are just impossible in those situations, they get kind of weeded out. So don't be that person. You know, take these opportunities and be flexible and be cool, and it'll be pretty rewarding most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, if there are flight delays, ground transportation breakdowns,
what are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
We were in Colorado not long ago, and we waited 2 hours because of some mix-up for a passenger van.
Yeah.
And it's like, you went in 3 times and said, hey, can we get this resolved? We're working on it. I mean, what are you going to do? Just hot wire a van and go? because you're ready to go. No, that's just one goofy, frustrating thing that, if you're not into that kind of thing, or you don't react well to that kind of thing, don't go into music. I mean, gigs too.
Right.
Hey, we got a 3-hour gig. 10 minutes before you go on. Oh, by the way, it's continuous. There's no breaks. It happens. You got to, and I don't like it. I get cranky as can be under those circumstances, but you can't refuse or, just show your butt.
John, did I ever tell you about the time I got stranded in the jungles of Colombia? And I don't mean South Carolina.
No. I'm not familiar with this story.
I was on a little jazz piano trio tour, and we were in an kind of a outlying city. In other words, not one of the big ones. It wasn't like Bogota or Medellin, small city in Colombia. And they don't play by the same rules down there that we do.
What?
No, man. Let me tell you what happened.
This
is just a brief story of some of the things you can expect with travel glitches. This is a good one. This was an airport that we were at that only operated in daylight hours because there were no lights after dark.
That might be a problem.
How about that for you? And on one side of the runway was a mountain, and on the other side of the runway was the terminal. So,
Neato.
yeah, right. Well, we had finished our tour. This was the last stop that we had, this small town. And to get back to Medellin, it was a short kind of a puddle jumper flight, one of those hour-long flights, right? Little commuter kind of flights. Well, in this little mountain town that we were in, the fog rolled in at about, I guess it was probably about noon or 1 o'clock. We were supposed to have a flight that went from that little town to Medellin from like 2 to 3 p.m. that day. Well, the fog rolled in. They shut the entire airport down. There's no lights, man. Shut it down. We had a flight from Medellin back to, I think it was Miami. It was either Miami or New York. It was one of those. We were flying back in too. And it was the following morning, the flight from Medellin, the international flight, was maybe like at 8 a.m. or 8:30. So we were sunk, right? Well, man, in a situation like that, doesn't do any good to jump up and down, scream, yell, blah, blah, blah. It ended up that we did make something work out, but we took a passenger van through the uncharted wilderness, mountains and jungles of Colombia to Medellin. It was the kind of thing where the distance between this town and Medellin was something like about 110 miles, but it took like 5.5, 6 hours to do it because you were like, going on these roads that were, on the side of a cliff. Right. Yeah. That kind of a thing, So that's the kind of stuff that you're dealing with here. We're not talking about first class, flying experiences with tea and caviar, sir. So you just, that's one little thing you have to deal with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remind me to tell you about my week in Mexico sometime.
Was it a tortured weekend? Was it like a Hunter S. Thompson style weekend in Mexico?
Yeah. Pretty much.
Did it involve
every day was something new and horrific.
A large Mexican lawyer was he involved?
We don't have time. Yeah. It's multi-tiered, multifaceted, and horrifying.
John, I think that all the points that we've said so far, all the aspects that we've talked about, it probably is understood. But let's go ahead and say also that when you're starting out, you need not be a money-driven individual.
Or when you're finishing.
Yeah.
Says the person put out the pasture.
Well, and again, to that point, what we mean is if you do the right thing, all these things we talked about, if you do the right thing, do it with the right heart, the money will come. Now, whether that means that it's avalanches of money, as in, you've hit the proverbial lottery with like a large band that you're a member of.
Your singer is named Bono.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Bono. Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah. Or if you are just fortunate enough to actually make a living, and you figure this thing out, your business is up and going. That's what we mean by that is not necessarily, being a money-driven person.
No, it's definitely a sacrifice of love and calling, for sure.
Yeah.
And, that's something that only you can answer, because, material things and plush vacations and 70-inch TVs, stuff like that, if that's important to you, there's a lot of other career paths that will make that a lot easier.
Yeah. Being financially responsible, though, it will definitely have its benefits, in the future. In other words, we don't want to make this a bleak thing from the standpoint of being discouraging. I mean, if you are financially responsible and, you eat your ramen noodles when you're 23, by the time you're 43, you're going to be in pretty good shape if you've got perseverance and you've got any business savvy, at all.
It's true.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised. I always joke about so many musicians, like I've done this for over 30 years now. And it's always like that next slow month. Oh, that's the one. Mm-hmm. It's all over. I'm going to get evicted. I'm not going to eat it. I've been saying that for 30 years, and I've always somehow got through it. Just sort of, I really believe if you're following your calling and using the gifts God gave you, that things typically are going to work out. And you have to be mindful of your end of the deal and being professional and responsible and making sound decisions financially and all that. But it tends to work out. If you're meant to do this, there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of the proverbial hands on you, guiding you.
Yeah.
And helping you.
Yeah. John, would you mind if I took a few minutes and stood on my soapbox?
What am I going to say? No? Come on, man.
Well, let me...
I love your soapbox.
Would you mind teching it for me, like setting it up? Soapbox.
Will you
tech.
set up my setup?
Okay. This is, you guys have heard this once or twice, but I'm gonna say it again, and I'm gonna say it from a slightly different angle. Okay. Myself.
Pretend I set this up.
Yeah. Setting it up.
Thank you.
Myself being a teacher and seeing lots of students that, have no choice, so to speak, and they're going to be professional musicians. Had many of those. And then there are certain ones that maybe say that they want to do this. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you something that I have kind of developed a little bit of a sixth sense on. And what that is I feel like that a lot of students these days, one of the biggest issues that they have is a general lack of curiosity about their instrument, a general lack of wanting to research and do things that are off the page, so to speak. In other words, do research on their own, figure things out on their own. I have found that as one of the big dividing lines between students and or people that this may not be the career for them versus ones that they know that it's their career. And that is something that I can't tell you how important it is as a professional drummer, as a professional musician, to have curiosity from the standpoint of do your research on things. In other words, don't just let a teacher or allow a teacher to put a page in front of you of, hey, here's a whole bunch of bossa nova exercises, and then you work on those bossa nova exercises and never explore how it's practically played. In other words, you've got to do research by listening to the great drummers, the great musicians, doing research on other methods, doing research on teaching, doing research on what it's like to go out and play gigs, talk to other drummers, reach out to other professionals, figure out all these different things that it takes to put together a career. That's the kind of thing that is sorely missing in a lot of young musicians today, is that they want a teacher to beat the knowledge into their head. I can sit there and show somebody, paradiddles and rudiments and things all day long. And, if you don't have the spirit of adventure outside of that to learn how to use them in the practical applications of them, I can show you some things, but you got to take it on your own at one time or another. So, I mean, that's a huge thing to me is, you've got to have some willingness to do some research.
Well, there's definitely, there's a little bit of, I'd say it's a disadvantage in a sense with all the advantages that people have today, in that when we were growing up, you had a few books and you had records to listen to, and you hopefully had a teacher that could help you continue developing as a player. If you didn't, in my case, you listened to records and you did everything you could to figure it out and cop it. And, there was not YouTube, there was not, online lessons and all these things. And the biggest concern I have with younger musicians, and I hope if you're going to choose this class, because quite frankly, the music business is going to be more and more challenging in making a living as opposed to the opposite, is that you are not only self-motivated, but not falling prey to this immediate gratification mindset that society has kind of come into, where, the easiest path, the immediate results kind of thing. I mean, it's just not going to happen as a player. It's not. You have to put in time. You have to put in research. You have to understand depth and history. And though there are advantages to achieving that, again, don't fall prey to the just immediate gratification and results that technology and the modern mindset can influence.
Yeah. It's so easy to turn on the computer or, go to YouTube on your phone and, put in, I need to learn like a certain Vinnie Colaiuta lick. And you get that instant gratification, man, of learning that Vinnie Colaiuta lick. But I mean, what is it past that? It's the whole conceptual approach to playing drums and the entire picture of what it's like to play drums and what it's like to be a professional musician and make a living is, I don't know, I think it's being lost on a lot of people. And, we're so used to, just like I said, turning on the computer and, looking for the hot lick and working this hot lick. And then, everybody tries to jam it into everything that they play.
Fixing your time.
Yeah.
Cleaning up a lick.
Absolutely.
As opposed to, let's do another take. Let me get that together. Let me get my motion where that time feels. All these things are, we become, like Scott Meter said, we become kind of lazy.
Yep.
And I think to set yourself apart, you got to get rid of that mindset and not be lazy. And I'm probably the laziest person you'll ever meet when it comes to drums, but a lot of other things we've talked about I've applied to my career and it's worked out.
Oh yeah.
And you in other words, as you said, there's a big picture here It's not just about a lick. It's not about being able to play, the hot gospel chops thing or, burning some Philly Joe licks. There's a big picture that successful musicians have.
Right.
Way beyond just the application of playing a drum set.
Right. And
their instrument.
It takes its form over a period of time, right? That is a combination of course, working on your technique and, of course, working on the things that you have to be able to do to be able to express the ideas that you have, right, on your instrument. But also you have to have the conceptual aspect of it, which comes from the research aspect that we talked about before, the listening to records, the talking to other players, going out and see other players. There's just a whole lot that's involved in the entire thing that's, as I like to say, it's off the page.
Definitely.
So, John, to kind of wrap it up, do you have anything else you want to say?
I just say another thing that we didn't touch on. I think just hanging with like-minded people that are, that was a real blessing for me. Is kind of being at least a little core group of people that were really kind of on the same page and understood without going into any detail where your head was and what you were focused on and what you wanted to do. Search those people out. Don't search out the negative naysayers or the person who's wearing you out about something to fall back on and all these things. If you know what you want to do, find the like-minded people, work together, help each other, encourage each other, try to grow as players, as, friends, as, peers. That can be a big part of it. I mean, it's kind of like a gang or something. I can think of different times in my life where there were people that we're all together here,
You have any cool gang signs, man, that you can show me? With your hands, the cool things?
I've used one sign quite a bit in my life, and it never goes over well. So I'm trying to break myself of that habit. It's international sign language, of course, but
it not to pull the curtain back from Oz, but would it be considered like a left-hand traditional grip kind of a thing? You could actually extend a finger a little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of, I guess you could apply it to that.
Well, like John said also, myself and himself, we both play with people that we've known for 30 years. Mm-hmm. We were able to surround ourselves with like-minded people. And those relationships, those personal and business relationships will do you good, man, during these times.
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, I'm where I'm at in Atlanta because of my best friend of 30 plus years.
Yeah.
I mean, there you go. And most musicians will tell you that's a common theme in their career and development and all that the people from way back are influential.
Yeah, one of the great benefits of going to a music school, especially a high-profile music school, is that you will be surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals.
That's great. You're right.
We discussed that in a previous podcast, but yeah, mm-hmm. that's one of the great benefits of it. So, well, anyway, guys, we're going to wrap this thing up today with another segment, and our segment today is going to be great underappreciated drum tracks. And so, John, you want me to go first today?
Sure.
Gotcha. The drum track that I'm going to talk about today is from the great Omar Hakim. And Omar Hakim he's had a pretty varied and storied career over his, I guess, probably last 40 years of playing, almost, something like that, 35, 40 years.
Yeah, I'd say, early 80s, he really kind of came on, and it's just been full bore since. So I'd say 35 solid years for sure of being up there.
Yeah. Well, that's the period of his career that I'm going to draw from,
Cool.
sir. And the track that I'm going to talk about today is from the great fusion band Weather Report, and it's from the Domino Theory album, which I believe is about 1984-ish, maybe 85, somewhere in that ballpark. And it's a little tune called the D-flat Waltz. Yeah. Omar Hakim is playing his tail off on this thing, man. Yeah, it's a little tune in 3, hence the D-flat waltz, right? But it is approached rather differently. You know, it's a song that's got these different sections that, you know, that Omar Hakim plays these different time patterns through. These wonderful kind of innovative, interesting patterns in 3 that kind of go between like a linear fusion-y kind of a thing, and then like a straight up swing in 3 that he goes from time to time, that he goes through from time to time. And there's a section in particular in this song that a lot of musicians like to talk about because it's somewhat unique. They do like a live band fade in the middle of this song where they're playing. They're doing this little vamp, and it sounds like at first that, hey, the song's fading out. But it's the entire band doing like a band fade. And then Omar just brings them in with a ripping and roaring drum fill, you know, getting into like the shout chorus when they take it out. And it's worth listening to, of course, for Omar Hakim, but, you know, you've got these other wonderful musicians that are on there as well. You've got, of course, Joe Zawinul and Wayne Shorter. That's their band, you know. So you get to hear these guys play on there. And it's also got some nifty, dated, like 70s and 80s like keyboard sounds and stuff there too, which is worth listening to. So that's my guy for the day. We have Omar Hakim from the Weather Report album, Domino Theory, the D-flat waltz. And just as a side note, there are many other tracks on there as well that Omar is just playing his tail off on. But that D-flat waltz, it stands out. Every time I hear it, man, it just sounds, his playing just sounds so fresh, man. I mean, it's the full package. Ton of chops, just a ton of chops. But incredible feel.
Yep.
And just the way that he plays it, the concept of how he plays that song and navigates the different parts of the song, the different vamps, the different aspects of that tune. He just does a great job, man, playing different stuff, but then gluing it all together, making it seamless. So D-flat waltz, Omar Hakim, Weather Report, Domino Theory.
What an excellent choice, man.
Thank you.
Omar, we love you. My track today is a really just straight up funky, nasty groove. And the song is an interpretation of A Night in Tunisia by the wonderful Chaka Khan. And the drummer is Casey Sherrill, who is unheralded in many ways. This guy played with Gino Vanelli, Jean-Luc Ponty, a great fusionist player, but just with a pocket second to none.
Good teacher.
Great teacher, Berkeley teacher. He's been at the forefront of, you know, education for a long time, and just great sound. Gretsch guy, fantastic drummer. But this track, man, it is just, there's so much attitude in it, and everyone on that track is just killing it, including Chaka. And there's also an amazing, break where Charlie Parker's, you know, one bar, ridiculous 4 millionth note riff is doubled by Herbie Hancock on a synth. But Casey, man, it is just, this track is, it still makes the hair stand up on my neck when I hear it. It's just so full of attitude and funk and awesomeness. Kind of difficult to find sometimes, but there's some. I'm sure on YouTube that track is available. It's a great Night in Tunisia, Chaka Khan.
Casey Sherrill, man.
What a monster.
first time I ever heard that name and saw him play, I was a kid back in the mid-'80s. I went and saw him do a clinic at a PASIC. Blown away.
Yeah.
Blown away. And a great teacher. I mean, just wonderful at explaining and showing and demonstrating. Incredible. Great call, man.
Thank you, sir.
You know what? I'm gonna double dip on one thing really quick. I'm gonna give a singer a prop.
All right.
Chaka Khan, to me, is an incredibly underrated jazz singer.
Yeah, I agree. Man, talk about delivering a tune and emotion.
Yep.
She can do it.
I'm gonna give here's your threefer.
Uh-oh.
I gave one, John gave one. I'm gonna give you another one really quick. Another great underappreciated, really an underappreciated album. Listen to the Griffith Park Collection and Echoes of an Era. Lenny White plays drums on there. Chaka Khan sings. Mm-hmm. Good Lord. Lenny White is a bebop monster, man.
He is
on there. He's out of his mind, and Chaka Khan sounds equally fantastic on there.
Agreed. And Lenny, just people don't know.
Yeah.
They just are locked into his fusion stuff yeah. And it's like I think that his true love is bebop, and you hear it, sound, everything. He's got it together.
Man, the sound of his cymbals on both Echoes of an Era and the Griffith Park Collection. And let me go ahead and say this. On Griffith Park Collection, Chaka does not sing on that, but Lenny White. It's the same set of sessions.
Right.
Okay. But it's the thing where Chick Corea put it together where it's a little bit like the Return to Forever band, but playing straight ahead stuff. Chaka Khan sings on the Echoes of an Era album, and there's actually another Echoes of an Era album where
I was gonna say it was kind of a series.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who Nancy Wilson sings on the other one.
Right.
That's what it is. Yeah, but it's the same rhythm section in the same band, and Lenny White has got some of the most fantastic sounding old Ks. Is what it sounds like. I mean, incredibly warm, wonderful, trashy sounding cymbals on there. And for our listeners of the show here, when you hear the intro, our little intro theme, there's a brief section of like this burning Latin groove that's on there. That is actually Lenny White back in the late 60s playing with Joe Henderson live at the Lighthouse.
Nice.
So there's a little bit of Lenny White straight ahead Latin stuff for you. So, wow, I didn't see this going in this direction.
Hey.
But man, that's a great call on the
I love it.
Casey Sherrill / Chaka Khan that led into that.
We are not scripted. Let it be known.
If you couldn't figure that out.
We're trading fours.
All right, John. Anything you want to put a button on this thing today?
Just go all in if you're going to do this.
Yeah.
And it's going to work out, man.
That's exactly right. You go into it realizing that there's going to be pitfalls along the way, but you're accepting it. Things are going to work out. Surround yourself with good people of like mind, and it's going to be great.
You're going to figure it out, and you will be better for it and happier for it.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we love bringing the show to you every Monday. Subscribe to us. We're on iTunes, Google Play Podcasts, Podbean, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and all your favorite podcast apps. Every Monday, a new show is posted. Reach out to us. Let us know how you feel about things. You can catch us at our email address, drummersweeklygroovecast@gmail.com. You can reach out to us on Facebook, facebook.com/drummersweeklygroovecast, and Twitter, twitter.com/DWGroovecast. We will see you next Monday. Until then, keep it in the pocket.
Goodbye.
And you knew who you were then. Girls were girls and men were men. Mister, we could use a man like Herbert Hoover again. People seem to be content. $50 paid your rent, and freaks were in a circus tent. Ha! Those were the days.